All right, fuckers, let's cut the crap. We all know vaping's a thing, but how many of us really know what the hell we're sucking into our lungs?
Yeah, it's a foggy landscape out there. You've got smokers trying to ditch the cancer sticks, curious teens thinking it's just harmless water vapor, and a whole lot of marketing bullshit making it all seem kind of cool and edgy.
So before we get into all that, let's break it down. What is vaping, really?
In a nutshell, e-cigarettes heat up a liquid, we call it e-liquid, turning it into an aerosol that you inhale. No fire, no tobacco, sounds pretty chill, right? But don't let that fool ya, doesn't mean it's safe.
So it's all about the e-liquid, huh? What the fuck is actually in that stuff? Break it down for us.
Okay, so the base is usually propylene glycol and glycerin. Sounds pretty harmless, right? But then you add varying levels of nicotine, a whole buffet of flavorings, and get this, sometimes even heavy metals can sneak into the mix.
Heavy metals. Fuck, that's not something you want in your lungs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so maybe not as harmless as some folks think, but hold up. Didn't vaping just kind of explode onto the scene recently? It feels like it was just yesterday. Everyone's rocking those jewels.
This is where it gets interesting. E-cigs aren't some new 21st century invention. Early prototypes actually date back to the 1920s, believe it or not.
The 1920s, you're shitting me. Can't picture those flappers hitting a vape pen.
Right. But the modern design we know and love today, that was popularized by a Chinese pharmacist, Han Lik, back in the early 2000s.
Oh yeah, Han Lik. Dude must be rolling in dough now, right?
Ironically, no. Knockoffs flooded the market before he could really cash in. Talk about bad luck.
Damn, that's some bullshit. Speaking of cashing in, didn't Big Tobacco initially laugh off e-cigs? Called them a fad or something?
Oh yeah, they totally dismissed it as a passing trend until they saw the potential profits. Now they own a huge chunk of the e-cigarette market. Figures, right?
Classic Big Tobacco. So now that they're calling the shots, it makes you wonder, are they really in it for harm reduction, or are they just trying to find new addicts?
$1 million question. Tough to say for sure, but it's worth thinking about.
Okay, let's get down to brass tacks. Are e-cigs actually safer than cigarettes? That seems to be their big selling point, right?
Here's the truth. E-cigs DO contain fewer toxins than cigarettes. That much has been proven. But UT, the long-term effects, still largely unknown.
Ah, there's the catch. We're all guinea pigs in this giant vape experiment.
In a way, yeah. And there are some specific risks that have already popped up. Lung damage from the metal coils, for example. Remember the Eva Lie outbreak a few years back? That was linked to vitamin E acetate in some vape liquids. And then there's the potential for birth defects from nicotine, which is pretty fucked up.
Jesus, birth defects. That's heavy shit. So, bottom line, we just don't know the full story yet.
Exactly. There's a lot more research that needs to be done. But one thing's for damn sure.
Nicotine is addictive as hell.
You got it. Whether you smoke it or vape it, that shit will hook you.
And we can't forget how they push those flavors, man, trying to lure in the younger crowd. Some things never change, do they?
Nope. It's like they're trying to make smoking cool again after decades of anti-smoking campaigns. It's a huge step backward.
Fucking ridiculous. So, with all this uncertainty and a potential danger, how the hell are e-cigs regulated?
It's a mixed bag, man. Bans in some countries, strict rules in others, and a total free-for-all in some places. It's like the Wild West out there.
And what about the FDA? What's their take on all this?
They're struggling, to be honest. Trying to figure out if e-cigs are tobacco products, medical devices, or something else entirely. It's a regulatory nightmare.
Sounds like a clusterfuck. So let's talk marketing for a minute. Those ads are everywhere, and some of them are pretty slick, gotta admit.
It's a major concern. The way they target young people with those sweet, fruity flavors and all that social media hype, it's straight out of Big Tobacco's playbook.
Right. It's like they learned nothing from the past. Pushing addiction with fancy packaging and trendy marketing pisses me off.
It's frustrating, to say the least. They're preying on people's vulnerabilities and downplaying the risks.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's take a breather and recap. What are the key takeaways so far?
E-cigarettes are complex, potentially less harmful than traditional cigarettes, but they come with their own set of risks and a whole lot we still don't know.
And despite all the marketing bullshit, the bottom line is
nicotine is addictive no matter how you consume it, and the long-term health consequences of vaping. Still a big question mark.
damn straight. So listeners, before you take another puff, ask yourself, is it really worth the risk?
Think about it. Do your research. Don't just buy into the hype. Knowledge is power, folks.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to keep this conversation going. We've got more to unpack, including a deeper dive into those controversial flavors and the whole debate around vaping as a harm reduction tool. Stick around.
Welcome back, vapors and vape-curious folks. Before the break, we were wading through the regulatory swamp that is e-cigs. It's a goddamn mess, let's be real.
Yeah, it's like every country's playing vape roulette, making up their own rules.
Yeah.
Some are all ban this, ban that, while others are practically giving these things away with a Happy Meal.
It's wild, right? Like, take Japan, for instance. They straight up banned e-cigs with nicotine. Can you believe that shit?
Seriously. So those folks are stuck with those weird heat-not-burn tobacco things? I heard those are huge over there.
Yeah, heat-not-burn products are massive in Japan. But across the pond in the UK, it's a whole different story. They're actually encouraging smokers to switch to e-cigs as a harm reduction strategy. They even got the National Health Service on board, saying it's a legit way to quit smoking.
Guess that makes sense if they see it as picking the lesser of two evils. But what about here in the good old US of A? Where do we stand on all this?
It's a mixed bag, as always. Selling and using e-cigs is legal for adults, but the FDA is still trying to figure out how to regulate them. Are they tobacco products? Medical devices? Hell, if anyone knows.
Sounds about right. Bureaucracy at its finest.
Yeah.
So, what kind of rules do we have? Age restrictions, anything like that?
The FDA is working on it, slowly but surely. They've been trying to get a grip on e-cigs since 2016, classifying them as tobacco products under that Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act. Basically, they want to control the marketing, the labeling, even how the damn things are made.
Oh, so they're finally stepping up. About damn time.
It's a start, but the tobacco industry's fighting back hard. They got their lobbyists working overtime to stop any restrictions on e-cig sales.
Of course they are. Follow the money, right? But at least we got some age restrictions, right? Don't need kids getting hooked on this shit.
Oh, for sure. Since 2015, pretty much every state and territory has banned selling e-cigs to minors. That's one win for public health, at least.
Okay, that's something. But you know what really grinds my gears? The goddamn marketing. They're pulling the same shady shit Big Tobacco has been doing for decades, targeting kids with flashy ads and those candy-ass flavors.
It's infuriating, and it's working. E-cig use among young people has skyrocketed in recent years, and you can bet it's connected to that increase in advertising.
Yeah, those social media campaigns are the worst. They use influencers and celebrities to make vaping look cool and trendy. It's predatory as hell.
Totally. It's all about creating a vaping culture, normalizing it for young people, even those who would never have touched a cigarette.
And then there's the whole harm reduction argument. They try to sell e-cigs as a safer alternative to smoking, a way to wean yourself off the nasty cigs. But is it really?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? On the one hand, e-cigs DO have fewer toxins than your typical cigarette. They don't have tar or carbon monoxide, for example.
So you're saying there's a chance they could help smokers quit?
Some evidence points that way. Studies have shown that e-cigs with nicotine can be more effective than other nicotine replacement therapies, like those patches or gum. But here's the catch.
They're still not safe.
Bingo! And that's what the anti-vaping folks are screaming about. They're worried that promoting e-cigs as harm reduction is going to backfire, leading to more people, especially young people, getting hooked on nicotine.
And who can blame them? Nicotine's a hell of a drug. Once that shit gets its claws in you, it's hard to shake.
Truth. And remember, we still don't know the long-term effects of vaping. We're just starting to understand the potential risks, the lung damage, heart problems, even those terrifying evaluate cases.
So we're back to square one. We just don't know enough yet. It's like playing Russian roulette with your lungs.
Pretty much. And here's another thing. A lot of those harm reduction claims assume people will switch completely from smoking to vaping.
But in reality,
a lot of people end up doing both. They become dual users, which actually increases their risk of health problems.
Double whammy. All right, let's talk about those damn flavors for a second. I mean, come on, cotton candy, bubblegum, even fucking unicorn puke. It's obvious who they're targeting with this shit.
It's disgusting. The flavors are a huge part of what makes it appealing to young people. It masks the harshness of the nicotine, makes vaping seem fun, less harmful.
It's like they're trying to turn nicotine into candy. Totally fucked up.
Totally. And don't forget, we don't even know the long-term effects of inhaling those flavoring chemicals. Some of them could be carcinogenic for all we know.
Shit, this is getting depressing. Is there anything positive to say about e-cigs at all?
Well, there's the environmental angle. E-cigs don't produce cigarette butts, which are a major source of litter, and they don't generate secondhand smoke, which is obviously harmful to bystanders.
Okay, so there's that. But overall, it sounds like the jury's still out on whether e-cigs are a net positive or negative for society.
Exactly. And it's a debate that's likely to rage on for years to come.
All right, let's shift gears and talk about one of the most controversial aspects of vaping. Nicotine salts. What the hell are these things, and why are they causing such a stir?
Nicotine salts are a newer form of nicotine that's been shaking things up in the vaping world. They're chemically different from the freebase nicotine found in traditional cigarettes and earlier e-cigs.
Okay, so what's the big deal with this chemical difference? Why should people give a shit?
Well, nicotine salts get absorbed into the bloodstream faster, and they give you a smoother hit, without that harsh throat feeling some people get with freebase nicotine.
So you're saying they're like nicotine on steroids?
In a way, yeah. They deliver a more intense nicotine hit, and some people find them more satisfying, which can be good for smokers trying to ditch the cigs.
But isn't that also a cause for concern? Doesn't that make them even more addictive?
That's a valid point. Because nicotine salts are absorbed so readily, they could potentially be even more addictive than freebase nicotine.
And haven't there been concerns about those super high concentrations of nicotine in some of those salt-lytic devices?
Absolutely. Some of these devices can deliver crazy high levels of nicotine, which can be dangerous for both experienced vapors and newbies. We've seen cases of nicotine poisoning and other nasty side effects.
Shit, that's scary. So it sounds like nicotine salts are a bit of a double-edged sword. They might help some smokers quit, but they also come with a higher risk of addiction and potential health problems.
You got it. It's a complex issue and there's no easy answer. But it's crucial for people to understand what nicotine salts are, how they work, and the potential risks involved.
Right on. All right, let's move on to another hot topic in the world of vaping. The gateway theory. Does vaping really lead to smoking? What does the research say?
The gateway theory. That's a controversial one, and the research is still ongoing. Some studies suggest that young people who vape are more likely to start smoking cigarettes later on.
So there's a connection there.
There's a correlation, yeah, but correlation doesn't always mean causation. It's possible that young people who are already prone to risky behavior are more likely to both vape and smoke, regardless of whether one leads to the other.
So you're saying it's not a clear-cut issue?
Not at all. It's a complex mix of factors. You've got individual psychology, social influences, access to both vaping products and e-cigarettes. It's messy.
So what's the bottom line on the gateway theory? Should we be freaking out about young people vaping leading them down the path to smoking?
We should definitely be worried about young people vaping in general, regardless of whether it leads to smoking. Nicotine is highly addictive, and it can mess with brain development, especially in adolescence.
Okay, fair enough. But what about the argument that vaping is just another form of harm reduction?
That's the argument being pushed by the vaping industry and some public health experts. They claim vaping is less harmful than smoking, that getting smokers to switch to vaping could actually save lives.
So are they right? Is vaping a legit form of harm reduction?
It's a tough question. There's no doubt that vaping is less harmful than smoking. Traditional cigarettes are packed with thousands of chemicals, many of them carcinogenic. E-cigarettes have far fewer chemicals, and the levels are generally much lower.
So that's a point in favor of vaping.
It is, but there are still concerns. We don't know the long-term effects of inhaling the chemicals in e-cigarette vapor. And even though the levels are lower, some of those chemicals are still potentially harmful.
So it's a trade-off. Less harm, but still some risk involved.
Exactly. And the big question is whether that reduced harm is enough to outweigh the risks of vaping, especially for young people and non-smokers who are taking up vaping.
Tough call. So where does that leave us on the harm reduction debate?
The debate's far from over. There's evidence on both sides. Ultimately, it's up to individuals to weigh the risks and benefits and make their own informed decisions about their health.
Okay, let's step back and look at the bigger picture. What does the future hold for e-cigs? Will they eventually replace traditional cigarettes, or will they just become another tool in big tobacco's arsenal of addiction?
Hard to say for sure. The e-cig market is constantly changing, with new devices and e-liquids popping up all the time.
And big tobacco's got their hands all over it, right?
Oh, absolutely. They've been investing heavily in the e-cig market, buying up smaller companies left and right. They're not going anywhere.
So what can we as consumers do to navigate this confusing and potentially dangerous world?
First and foremost, be informed. Do your research, read beyond the headlines, and be critical of the information you're given. Don't just believe the hype, whether it's from e-cig companies or anti-vaping activists.
Solid advice. Think for yourself, folks. Don't let these companies think for you.
Exactly. And if you're thinking about vaping for whatever reason, talk to your doctor, get their professional opinion, weigh the potential risks and benefits.
And if you're already vaping, be honest with yourself about your habits. Are you truly using it as a harm reduction tool, or are you just hooked on the nicotine?
It's an important question to ask yourself.
Yeah,
And if you're struggling to quit, there are resources available to help. Don't be afraid to reach out for support.
damn straight. There's no shame in asking for help. All right, I think we've squeezed every last drop of knowledge out of this topic. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Just this. The world of e-cigs is complex and constantly changing. There's a lot we still don't know about the long-term health effects, and the regulatory landscape is still evolving. But one thing's for certain. Knowledge is power. The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to make informed decisions about your health and well-being.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there, folks. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the potential risks and the unknowns of vaping. But let's be real, people are still going to vape, right?
Yeah.
So let's dive into some of the wild new shit popping up in the vape world. What's got you excited or maybe terrified these days?
Well, one thing that's both fascinating and kind of concerning is the rise of those disposable vapes. Those things are everywhere you look now.
Yeah, those little colorful sticks you see kids puffing on.
Exactly. They're crazy popular, especially with the younger crowd. And there are a few reasons for that.
Hit me with it. What's the appeal?
First off, they're convenient as hell. You don't got to refill them, charge batteries, none of that. You just puff away till it's dead, toss it in the trash.
Sounds pretty appealing for someone who doesn't want the hassle of those traditional vapes, I guess.
Right. And they're cheap, which is a big draw, especially for younger folks.
So what's the catch? These things sound like a dream come true for big tobacco.
Well, the catch is they're creating a whole new set of environmental problems. These disposables are mostly plastic with lithium-ion batteries, which don't biodegrade. They're piling up in landfills by the millions, and we don't really have a good way to recycle them yet.
Damn, so it's convenience over sustainability, as usual.
Pretty much. And then there's the whole flavor issue. These things often come in a crazy variety of super sweet, candy-like flavors, which, let's be honest, are aimed straight at young people.
Yeah, we talked about the flavor thing earlier. It's fucked up how they're trying to make nicotine appealing to kids.
It is. And those disposables are making the problem even worse. They're so easy to get a hold of, easy to hide.
So what can we do about this disposable vape craze? Any solutions on the horizon?
Some countries and cities are starting to ban disposable vapes altogether. But that's not a perfect solution, really. It could drive the market underground, create a black market for them.
Yeah, prohibition never really works, does it? What about recycling programs or something?
No, there are some companies working on making more sustainable disposables, using biodegradable materials and making the batteries easier to recycle, but that's still in the early stages.
Well, hopefully they figure something out before these things turn into a full-blown environmental disaster.
I agree. It's a serious problem that needs more attention.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about another trend in the vape world. The increasing potency of these e-liquids. I've heard some of these new juices have crazy high levels of nicotine.
It's true. The average nicotine strength in e-liquids has been steadily climbing over the past few years. Some of these new products have as much as 50 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter.
50 milligrams. That's insane. Isn't that like smoking a whole pack of cigarettes in one sitting?
It's a massive amount of nicotine, and it can be really dangerous, especially for people who are new to vaping or have a lower tolerance.
So why the hell are they making these super strong e-liquids?
Well, some vapors, especially those trying to quit smoking, they want a stronger hit, something that will satisfy those cravings more effectively.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about people who aren't trying to quit? Why would they want to vape such high levels of nicotine?
It's become a bit of a trend, unfortunately. Some people, especially younger vapors, they're chasing that nicotine buzz. And the higher the strength, the better, or so they think.
So it's like a competition to see who can handle the most nicotine. That's just asking for trouble.
It is. And there's a real risk of nicotine overdose with these high-strength products. You're talking nausea, vomiting, dizziness, rapid heartbeat, even seizures in some cases.
Shit, that's scary stuff. So what can be done about this increasing nicotine strength?
Some countries have already set limits on the maximum nicotine strength allowed in e-liquids. That's a good first step.
Yeah, we need some common sense regulations, especially when it comes to addictive substances like nicotine. Protect people from themselves, right?
Absolutely. And we need to educate people about the risks of vaping such high levels of nicotine. It's not a game, it's a serious health hazard.
Well said. All right, let's wrap this up with a final thought for our listeners. What's the one thing you want people to take away from our deep dive into the world of vaping?
I think the most important takeaway is this. Vaping is not harmless. It might be less harmful than smoking, but it still carries risks. And we're still figuring out the long-term effects.
So proceed with caution.
Exactly. Do your research, weigh the risks and benefits, and make informed decisions about your health.
Well said. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We covered a lot and hopefully it gave you some things to think about. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there.